Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Y'all act like you've never seen a psyop before. Jaws on the floor, Jake Lang sneaking through the back door, tweeting about Patriots, but he's Antifa hardcore. He's the J6 snitch, yeah, he's flipping the score. Jake, man, what's he hiding now? Working for the feds, got the MAGA crowd wowed, but the ex-sleuths are typing, calling out his clout. Is he the real Fed Shady? Time to find out, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady. All you other Jake Langs are just playing Patriot, baby. So won't the real Fed Shady please stand up? Please stand up, please stand up, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady, snitching from the cell block. I'm never gonna fade. See, so won't the real Fed Shady please stand up? Please stand up, please stand up. Yeah, I'm Jake Lang, the J6 mystery man. Say I'm a patriot, but I'm rocking Antifa's plan. Gotta give Sango $500,000 in the bag, but it's Fed hush money, not a patriot brag. I'm in the DC gulag, tweeting up a storm. Podcast from my cell, keeping feds informed. Started another militia, said let's start a fight, but it's just a front. I'm a Fed plant, right? They say I stormed the Capitol, swung a bat, oh my, but I was leading the charge for the FBI. Posting on X, I'm a martyr, believe me, but the ex-detectives say, Jake, you deceived me. I'm the king of the J6s, or so I claim, but I'm dropping names to the feds for fame. Call me Fed Shady, I'm playing both sides. Antifa in disguise, taking patriots for ride, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady. All you other Jake Langs are just playing patriot, baby. So won't the real Fed Shady please stand up? Please stand up, please stand up, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady, snitching from the cell block. I'm never gonna fade. See, so won't the real Fed Shady please stand up? Please stand up, please stand up. I'm out here scheming, got a telegram plot. Say it's for the patriots, but it's feds I got. MAGA called my militia just a hyped up lie. 100,000 soldiers, nah, it's me and a guy. Got bounced from CPAC, made a big old scene. Yelled about brown shirts, but I'm working the scheme. They call me a rioter, I say I'm a saint, but I'm filing reports while I'm dodging the paint. My ex-feeds popping 80K in my crew, but half of them are bots and the feds follow too. Patriots got my number, say I'm Antifa's pawn. Wearing black block at night, a MAGA hat at dawn. Before Trump's pardon, things were looking grim. Don't expose the junkie who's been flipping on him, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady. All you other Jake Langs are just playing patriot, baby. So won't the real Fed Shady please stand up? Please stand up, please stand up, cause I'm Fed Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady.
The J6 prisoner infiltration story, that's what needs telling. Welcome to Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show. And we're live on World YouTube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. And look for us to be on the channel lineups on Samsung and Roku and other locations like that real soon. Well, look, I've followed the story of the January 6th prisoner community infiltration since I first learned about it firsthand last year. We've all seen the factual stories emerge, hinting that federal agents, confidential informants, and other human sources were in the crowd on January 6th and even provoked pockets of violence that happened that day. But lesser known is the story about the infiltration of the J6 political prisoner population itself, who those infiltrators are, and what was or is their mission. Now that the prisoners have been pardoned or had their sentences commuted in some cases, we need to take a deeper look at this issue, because if we do not, these same provocateurs will be free to continue creating chaos and violence in our society. Today, we're talking about this guy you just saw in the video there. And I like that tune. That was a great song. Wish we could have played all 4+ minutes of that video. But this guy, Jake Lang, I've got an eyewitness to his activities in the DC Gulag about this infiltrator and his recent activities to try and incite what sounds to me like a race war. And that's my guest today. He's one of those J6 political prisoners. Former U.S. Army Sergeant Tim Hale was held in the D.C. Gulag for years. Federal prosecutors tried to use protected speech against him in the sham trial he was convicted in on the notorious 1512C obstruction felony. I'm waiting to see some prosecutors charged with criminal activity for that one, by the way. But Tim wasn't charged with engaging in any violence or property destruction. Mr. Hale is also a former union leader and federal contract employee with the United States Navy. Tim, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me, sir. It's great to be here. And we're going to have a whole album by next month. I guarantee you're going to have a whole album. And yeah, I'm looking forward to some
Is that
fancy
you singing
new
on
tunes.
that? I ripped that off of your timelines. Was that you singing on that? Because it's great.
I have amazing pipes, don't I? No, it's completely AI. Completely AI. But I can take credit. Why not?
Well, if you created it, you're the curator, my friend. You need to publish that and sell it. You know?
Right? No,
I'm not opposed to making money.
The truth should never be behind a paywall. No,
There you go. Hey,
well,
that's
so,
good. I like.
you
I'm
know,
not saying
you
put it behind the
actually-
paywall, but sell it in record album places. You know, that kind of commercial activity. Anyway,
we gotta. I'm building my comedy career back up. I got to do what I can. These are rough times. But you know, sir, you hit on a very important point through this, which is that this kind of stuff really is going to keep happening, and it's just going to keep escalating into absurdity. So, I mean, for a long time, those of us who had to deal with that insanity inside the DC jail, the Gulag, we kind of were just yelling into the wind. Nobody knew what we were going through, what we were seeing, and nobody cared. And a lot of people actually tried to cover it up. But now people kind of see it for themselves. And I think most people who see it aren't going to fall for this sort of psyop. But I think it's important people realize that this is just one thing in a long line of things. Before this, it was various militia plots. And so, yeah, these kinds of things are just going to keep happening. And it's my hope that in the future, we can have sort of like a church committee style investigation into how these kinds of things are carried out, because they're just going to keep happening. Another J6 could happen if we don't start checking this kind of behavior.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you saw any of the president's cabinet meeting from just a little bit ago, a few minutes ago, actually. But Secretary Marco Rubio was actually talking publicly about a whole organization within the Department of State that was tasked with monitoring and surveilling social media accounts of Americans and flagging them as disinformation spreaders. Vectors, I think was the word he used, vectors of disinformation. And that's the kind of thing that we have to continue to open up to the world. And I believe that this issue is embedded in that world somehow. And it's got to be one of the ties into people like this. And this guy that I'm focusing on today is Jake Lang. I first heard about him from you when I met you face to face last year. And I told you then, I said, hey, we do need to look at that at some point. So this is my first opportunity to do that. So how long were you in the Gulag with Jake Lang, and who is this guy?
So I was in there for the better part of 2 years, and with him in particular, it was on and off because he would incite riots and constantly get sent to the hole or transferred to other facilities. I think he was bounced between 20 or 21 different jails or prisons. He was actually my cellmate when we were in Virginia before we got to DC. He was the first guy I met on Con Air, where he was constantly bragging about assaulting the cops for 3 hours with a bat. And basically, he's an anarchist who's been posing as this J6 patriot. He was close with Zach Alam. He's the Antifa guy who got Ashley Babbitt shot through the neck. When he got a baseball, he actually received a baseball bat at the Capitol, which he was using to fight the cops with. He was actually handed that by another Antifa guy named Josiah Kenyon, who was a communist who told the FBI that he wanted to get Trump supporters shot. So what you end up having is that there are these people mixed into the crowds with us on January 6th. Not everybody was there for the same purposes. In the jail, A lot of people initially cut him a lot of slack, including myself, because he thought, well, maybe this guy is just an idiot. Maybe he just behaves like a child because he's spoiled or whatever. But he ended up he started trying to get people to sign incriminating documents. He started trying to enlist people in these militias to overthrow the government. One thing he did was he tried to get the Oath Keepers to sign a document called the Declaration of Sedition. This was right when they were given a superseding indictment for seditious conspiracy. Why would anybody do that? Yeah, I mean, the guy he tried to enlist me in a militia to overthrow the government. This is after the government is alleging I was trying to start a civil war. He tried to get other defendants, especially veterans and people with military experience, to take leadership roles in militias to overthrow the government. He did this 3 different times. Right after January 6th, if you watch that music video, I put a screenshot. There was some guy named Christopher Finney. I don't know this guy, but I believe about last year he was picked up. They found his information in Lang's phone. That was from his first militia plot. The second militia plot was in the jail with us. And then the third one was after I got out of prison. He started this group called Napalm USA, which was basically a Telegram group. They wanted you to, start communicating and coordinating and stuff. It's just a way to gather information. And so what you see is it's very reminiscent, actually. I'm sure you remember the Whitmer plot, the fake Fednapping plot out of Michigan, where you have this fake militia. Bunch of guys largely don't even know each other, and they basically get set up for supposedly trying to kidnap the governor because some people are saying a few things. You have like 2/3 of the people in that group are feds. This is how they do that kind of stuff. Everyone's like, yo, this is a really bad idea. Don't do this. We're not getting involved in this. And it just never ended. And it was just more of the same stuff. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. And fortunately, sir, all my friends are out of prison now because Trump let everybody out, and they're co-signing what I'm saying. Everybody I was locked up with is corroborating what I'm saying. This isn't hearsay. This is real stuff that went on. And fortunately, now they're out and they can talk about it. But I think his little race psyop blew up in his face. I think most people are distancing themselves from it. But keep in mind, I was the one framed as this rabid neo-Nazi because of a Hitler mustache joke from 5 years ago. And how ironic is it that I'm the one calling out the very clear, obvious glow-in-the-dark psyop to incite racial tension? And here's what I think it is like, I think that you see this common thing where you have some bizarre degenerate thing over here, and then there's a controlled opposition counter narrative where you have these people who are there to basically rail against the degenerate thing. You see it with like the drag queen story hour thing. It's like, and so like, I think that what this was supposed to do was basically to lure people out who are frustrated about racial conflict in the U.S. and it was supposed to incite something. I think people didn't really fall for it, but that's what it is. It's about inciting racial tension. Social tension, I should say. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we're going to spend some time on that during the rest of the show too. Do you think we got to go to a break in about a minute and a half? But I just wanted to ask you this: did anybody fall for like the Oath Keeper guys signing stuff or any of that? Did they fall for it, or?
I think people were a little too loose a little liberal with their signatures on certain things, but no, thankfully, I don't think anybody fell for his signature thing. Otherwise, the Oath Keepers would have been in a lot more trouble, and they already had people in the jail with us. It wasn't just, by the way, it wasn't just Lang. There, about at the worst point, I would say 1/3 of the people that were in there with us when I was there were some sort of rat or Antifa. And so it was an uphill battle for everyone, especially the Oath Keepers. But yeah, fortunately, they weren't dumb enough to fall for that.
Yeah. I just want to mention before we go to the break, the effort patriotbidproject.com that's been started by Cynthia Hughes. You can follow her at RealPFP, Patriot Freedom Project. But the Patriot Bid Project is to help J6 couple. Look, the J6ers folks have been devastated. And the bid project's to sell a portrait. We'll put the portrait up in the next segment so you can take a look at it, and we'll call out the website again. My guest today is Tim Hale, a J6 political prisoner. He's calling out the infiltrators. Jake Lang appears to be one of them, and it's very important that we identify him and his activities for the safety of the United States of America. We'll be right back on Whistleblower Wednesday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
A man loses his 17-year-old son. Son dies in his twin brother's arms, and Jake Lang, a Jewish man from New York who has moved to Florida and has driven to Texas, is telling Austin Metcalf, father, how he should feel and how he should respond. I don't know. Other than the murder of Austin Metcalf, I don't know if you could do anything more despicable than that.
I don't think you can. You know, I mean, the only thing that I would say is even more despicable than that is the fact that you're calling this man out who is a believer. The man professes to have faith in Christ, right? And he said that he forgives him. That he forgives him. And you know how much strength that takes to forgive somebody that has taken away something so precious as your son? That takes a lot of forgiveness and a lot of strength to have. And what makes it even more despicable is that the dude next to him, Philip Anderson, who I call his Wookiee, that he owes him a life debt. You know, you ever watch Star Wars? If you save a Wookiee's life, they owe you a life debt. So they're going to be loyal to you no matter what. Philip Anderson is his Wookiee. He's his personal Samuel Jackson from Django. You know what I'm saying? And it's despicable that that man comes in and says, hey, a black man here, just telling you you're weak. You're weak. First off, if this man didn't have a racist bone in his body, he might have just got one because you want to step up and talk about, hey, a black man here. You're not a black man, bro. You a demon. You're a demon. You're a follower. You're a follower of the devil that you run with. And both of y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. You're just disgusting people trying to cause a divide in America where right now it should be a time of healing for everybody. Anybody preaching a racial divide and making this whole thing racial, that's sickening. It's disgusting. Flat out, man. We ain't got no room for that. We're all Americans. How about just call out violence? Say violence is wrong. Say racism is wrong. Why put a color on it? That's the problem that I have with him, is you're putting a color on it while you're running for office. Ain't nobody voting. That again, it's a psyop. You know you ain't gonna win. You're trying to get clout right now, but you got the clout that you wanted now, buddy. I promise you that.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. My guest today is former U.S. Army soldier, Navy contractor, union leader, and J6 political prisoner, Tim Hale, today. And he's calling out, and has been for quite some time, the infiltrators into the J6 political prisoner community itself. You know, we've talked about the infiltration that likely and I will say probably caused the violent parts of January 6th to actually occur, in large part between them and the actual police that did things like shoot incendiaries into the crowd without warning or provocation. Those kinds of things, and they appeared to be working together, but we haven't really talked a lot about these infiltrators, and this is why. That was Jason Whitlock and a J6er named Cash Kelly on that clip there, and Cash is calling out Jake Lang, the individual that we're talking about today, and they're talking about this protest that he led over in Texas, supposedly in support of Austin Metcalf, who is the young white male football star that was killed with a knife in a knife attack, allegedly. I will say that because the kid deserves due process by a young black male athlete from another school. And that guy has been let out on bail and everything. Look, you're still innocent in this country until proven guilty. We can't throw that out just because the other side throws it out. because we're Americans, number one. And number two, look, the president, I hope, is known, this one, Trump, as the great uniter, because we have gone through a great period of division by race, gender, ideology from Barack Obama on through the Biden administration. And this country, the people of this country love each other. We really don't give a damn what color we are. And I'm not the guy that's going to shy away from saying that white men have been trashed the last 20 years and are discriminated against, and that there may be a race element to this attack too. But when you have this guy, Jake Lang, all of a sudden he becomes the leader of this, I'll call it out, Protect White America, that just got created overnight and goes all the way to Texas to start something. Something smells here, and that's why we have to do these kind of programs to get this information out. And Tim Hill has firsthand knowledge of this guy over a period of years at different locations and what his activities were. Tim, your thoughts on the flip?
Well, sir, I mean, again, it really does. So first off, Cash is another guy who was locked up with me. I was with Cash Kelly for basically, again, better part of 2 years in the DC jail. Cash is a guy, he was, Cash was held in the DC jail for misdemeanors. You know, and a lot of, and here's the funny thing too, is like, he was one of the few men of African-American descent in the jail with us anyway, in the J6 wing. And he never really faced any racial discrimination except from Jake Lang, basically grifters, leftists, and informants. And yeah, basically there were attempts to incite racial conflict, incite riots, and things like that. And it was from the very person he was speaking about. Cash was 100% correct. 100% correct. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously, yeah. I want to factors here. What he did to that father was morally wrong. It was reprehensible. But I can look at this as objectively as possible. Mm-hmm. Where you just alluded to the fact that, you know, it's no time for, you know, this kind of racial stuff. And Cash said the same thing too in his interview. And we just had a monumental victory with Trump's reelection. We made gains in every single demographic group. If ever there was hope that we could move towards a, maybe not post-racial society or whatever, but definitely towards a more unified one with less racial tension, you would think the worst thing you could do is start trying to incite racial antipathy. And I think that's exactly what this is designed to do, but it's also multifaceted. So if you followed him like we've followed him, he's bounced between different things. Like I say, one day it's a militia plot and gathering people's names. The next day it's some give, send, go scam so he can embezzle or launder whatever, $1 million, pretending that he's sending them Bibles to Christians in Uganda. You know, I mean, it's like one day, every other day it's something different. So on the one hand, yeah, there's the scamming and the grifting, and that's gone on for a decade at least. But then there's also the chameleon aspect. So again, like I said, he's actually an anarchist. He's not a Trump supporter. He's not a conservative. He's not a Republican. I'm an independent who supports President Trump, but I'm open about that. I don't pretend to be something that I'm not. I'm pro-union. You know, I don't pretend that I'm not. I think that we can have a big tent in support of President Trump. But one thing I can't really understand is why an anarchist who didn't even vote in 2020, who didn't vote for Trump either times actually, wants to be the face of January 6th and wants to start trying to derail the conservative movement. That makes no sense, except it kind of does. And so, yes, there's the grifting aspect, but there's also the infiltration aspect. You had alluded to the fact that I've been calling this out for a long time. I fortunately was able to get out of prison earlier than a lot of my friends. And so I made it my mission to basically be a bullhorn for them while they had no voice behind bars. And one thing that we were pretty confident of was that this was some sort of modern day Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird obviously originated at a time when most information and disinformation was spread through dead media, cable and print. But now it's all about influencers. And so this is a guy who pretends that he's a big shot influencer, largely with paid for followers, bots, social media, managers in the Philippines and stuff like that. It's all AstroTurf. And this is something people need to realize. When I got out of prison, I already suspected this beforehand because I was a history major and I've studied psyops and that kind of thing. I know what to look for. But when I got out of prison, I was amazed at how bad it really is. I'd say like 90% of the stuff you see on the internet is just completely fake and AstroTurf. And I think that, again, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I feel like I speak for a lot of the guys I was locked up with. They are going to turn January 6th defendants into false messiahs to try to become like these thought leaders in America, even though it's undeserved. There are brilliant January 6th defendants, and then there are some who are atrocious. There are some who are genuine patriots, and then there are frauds. And what they're going to do is they're going to use J6 defendants because of what we suffered through, and they're going to put us up on a pedestal, and they're going to try to use us to infiltrate and co-opt I'm going to say, the younger next generation of conservative thinkers. I guarantee that, yeah, there is an attempt to AstroTurf certain J6 people who are not even real Trump supporters and turn them into basically, yeah, the next internet psyop. I'm pretty confident of that. And that's why I felt it was necessary to call it out as soon as I got out. We didn't have the voice to call it out, but we knew this was going to happen, and it has happened. It's exactly what's happened.
I mean, here we are, Tim. Here we are. And look, I think they're trying to impact elections. Well, we have a municipal election going on right here at Gulfport, Mississippi. And just yesterday, there was a guy screaming and hollering about white racism against black people. And it's this kind of stuff that this Lang guy did just the other day that gives them the ammunition to use to divide people by race and influence elections to get people elected that will continue to push the craziness that President Trump's team is working really hard to get rid of right now and that we voted for. Well, we got a question or two over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that before we get to the break. Go ahead. Patriot Rob's our host over there. Who's up first?
We have Joseph Colonel.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Tim. I'm just curious about this. This is one-off. Do you believe that he is part of a group like Operation Mockingbird, where they used a concerted effort to generate opinion? I mean, I think that there may be more actors involved in this whole situation, or is this just opportunism by these people?
Well, I think it's twofold, and I think it's multifaceted. Well, first, I'll say it's both. I think that there is opportunism that's a component of it. And if you weren't there, if you're not aware, there were a lot of people who have turned January 6th basically into an industry, right? So, the Colonel had mentioned this website we have, Patriot Bid Project, or basically the idea is like, oh, you can bid on this painting. The painting was made by a January 6th defendant's wife, and it's being sold for charity. All right. But then you've had other people, and because a lot of J6ers, basically their lives have been destroyed. But what you've also had is that people have tried to turn January 6th into a cash cow. And so they've used Give Send Go accounts for basically, I'm going to say, laundering money, right? Kind of like Ukraine. It's like, oh, we need all this money for Ukraine. It's just, yeah. And so, yeah, I think that a lot of people, and he's one of them, yeah, he's absolutely tried to make a lot of money off of January 6th. But I also cannot look past the obviousness of what it means when you're trying to get someone to sign incriminating documents. I can't look past what it obviously is when you are not a Trump supporter, you're at a massive Trump gathering, you are an avowed anarchist, and you spent your life basically drifting back and forth to leftist or anarchist causes, and you spent your entire time locked up with us disavowing President Trump and calling him a fraud. So it's both. And this is hard to imagine because I recognize it sounds crazy. This is why if you follow my account, I have so many receipts. I saved everything I could. I was a history major. I know the importance of primary sources. But I also knew, just as a human being, if I didn't save this stuff, nobody would believe it because it's so crazy. But a lot of these dudes who were snitching, a lot of these dudes who were basically there to mess up our cases, they would brag about it out in the open, and then they would try to make money off of it. They would stab you in the back inside the jail in the gulag, and then they would get somehow unlimited interviews when no one else got them, and they would portray to the public that they were these huge January 6 patriotic hostages while they stabbed everyone in the back, and they were making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And it was not a rare occurrence. So like I said, I think at the worst point, maybe about a third of the people we were locked up with were a confederation of junkies, rats, snitches, informants, Antifa, leftists, and what have you. So I think it's a combination. It's a combination. You got to think, what is the kind of person who, I mean, is it improbable that someone who's willing to throw someone else under the bus so they can get out of trouble for a drug conspiracy, is it really improbable that they'd also be willing to frame themselves as a hero and make money while they do it? Unfortunately, and you can ask anybody we were locked up with, that's exactly what it was. The people who stabbed us in the back and tried to sabotage our cases were also the people trying to get rich off of January 6th. And it's gross, but it's true.
Yeah, and a lot of people get fooled. When we come back, we'll hear from a guy named Jason Cohn. He calls it out for what he sees it, a psyop that was going on with this Austin Metcalf protest that Lang was leading over there. We'll be right back with Tim Hale, J6 political prisoner, former J6 political prisoner, now pardoned by the President of the United States, here on Whistleblower Wednesday.
Now, here's something I need to warn people about. Matt Wallace, who literally makes up lies, in my opinion, and spreads them on X, he's one of the most prolifically community-noted individuals in history, has published this. This will be one of the largest protests in history. White Americans, we are done being pushed around. While that may be true, okay, while that may be true, let's take a look at this poster. Protect white Americans. Justice for Austin Metcalf, exclamation point. Demand Carmelo Anthony be put back in prison until trial. Peaceful protest. April 19th at 11 a.m. So that would be what? This Friday? Wait, what is the date today? The 17th is Thursday, so Saturday. Frisco, Texas. Not Frisco, Texas. They misspelled the city on the banner. Wakefield High School parking lot. I believe they also misspelled the school. So I don't really understand exactly what's going on. Protect White Americans was founded by January 6th political prisoner and U.S. Senate candidate Jake Lang. This is, I understand people wanting to rally around this, but this feels like a fed op. Don't go to this. Don't advertise it if it's even real in the first place. The spelling errors are suspect, given it's especially something as easy to spell as Frisco. This seems like an op. This seems like, I can't recommend enough to people to stay away from this if it's real. Jason Willock even points it out. This is Charlottesville 2.0. I get the motivation, but this isn't the right approach. Just because Trump is in office doesn't mean there won't be paid Fed agitators. They're to spark bad behavior. Trump was in office during J6 and Charlottesville. He's 100% right. Do other things, don't go to this. This is like glowing off the charts for me. Donate to his family. Carmelo has raised double what his own family has raised. Consider that. Stay away from this with, don't touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is Tim Hill, a January 6th political prisoner that was actually a cellmate and spent a lot of time in prison with Jake Lang. That was a little short course there. Jason Cone described, just going through the poster, Tim, about how to recognize that something might really be an op of some sort, whether it's a Fed op or Antifa op or whatever, or a political op by a party or some other entity. Doesn't really matter. You don't want to get caught up into it. And he made a good point, didn't he? President Trump was in office during Charlottesville and January 6th. And that gets back to my point about the elections coming up here on June 3rd for mayor and all the city council. In my town, they're in Deep South Mississippi, generating and stoking racial divide and racial violence against each other is to the benefit of the other side. And those ops are likely to increase in the Trump administration. So we need to get better at calling them out, don't we?
100%. And, sir, I don't need to tell you, like, the amount of times intelligence agencies or federal law enforcement tried to undermine President Trump's administration, it's hard to keep track. The entire system was weaponized not just against J6 defendants, but also against President Trump. So if they were willing to indict him multiple times, if they were willing to sabotage him with the Russia collusion nonsense, this, that, and the other thing, what aren't they willing to do? So 100%, we can't be confident. And I hate to say it, we can't be confident that just because a new administration started, that these kinds of things are not going to keep happening. They've been going on since the 60s at minimum. So yeah, we have to stay vigilant or we're going to get entrapped. People have got to, it's unfortunate because like this is what you would expect from like the czarist, like the Russian Empire or like Rome at its most decadent or something like that. But this is the United States, unfortunately. And we have a government that is comfortable in trapping a third of its population at any given time. And people need to be, it shouldn't have to be like that. We should be able to freely assemble, say what we want, say what we feel. But unfortunately, we are at this point in our history where everything we do is being monitored and can be taken out of context at any time. They will try to set people up. They have to start thinking like that. It sucks. It shouldn't be like that, but that's how it is. 100% how it is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I wanted to ask you about this account at Napalm USA. You mentioned that national militia to overthrow the U.S. government that Lang created. Now, this account was created just last year, but when I look at the list of leaders at the state level and national level, I know a lot of those people. I've met them. I actually have worked with some of them over a long period of time. I would never guess they would be part of something like this because I do know them so well. What is going on with that? What is that?
So being as generous as possible. I love debate. I'm a blood sport debater, and so I can be as generous as possible here with the argument. He has been known to put people's names on things without their consent or knowledge. So I am not going to say that Diamond and Silk are Fed agents. I'm not, it's not, if you look at the list, it's a weird collection, honestly. But some of them, like Ann Vandersteel, for instance, a lot of people follow her. She was at the Capitol telling people to go in the building. She went in the building herself. She was never prosecuted. And she was handing out fake media passes. It's very probable that she is some sort of asset. And, people don't like to point the finger, but I'll do it. I don't care. You have people on that list who are suspected FBI informants because of previous things in the past. When you look at some of the content that some people on that list make, it clearly reeks like some sort of a DHS operation. I did an interview with one of the people on that list, and I tried to talk about feds in the crowd on January 6th, and all they wanted to talk about was Israel and Zionists and stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's a conversation, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You have people on that list who were at least accused. One of the people on that list was accused of trying to claiming that they were going to assassinate President Trump. I don't know if I'm sure you remember Van Miller, and I'm not saying he did say this, but it was a huge thing that out in California, he allegedly said he wanted to assassinate the president, and he's one of these state commanders on that list. Again, might have been a total misunderstanding. It's weird he's on the list because of because especially with his coverage of the Bundy Ranch thing. And then you have his lieutenant commander, Mindy Robinson. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff where you have these influencers who just, and I've confronted these people, by the way. I confronted Mindy Robinson. I was just like, hey, I'm pretty sure the guy you're getting involved with here is a federal informant. She's like, it doesn't matter. We're innocent. And it's just like, oh, well, you're just going to lead sheep to the slaughter. You know, it's like that kind of, that mindset is just, it's way too lax. I don't know how someone knowing the history of entrapment schemes could just possibly be so nonchalant and just kind of blow it off like it's not a big deal. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people on that list are extremely suspect. I'm not saying that they're federal agents, but I think that a lot of people on the right, especially, and I'm just say this, I think a lot of people on the right are easy to manipulate with influencers. You say the right thing, guns good, libs bad, then people are willing to just walk into any sort of little operation and not even question it. And it's kind of like I said too. I think militias are constitutional. I think the Second Amendment protects your right to, that's not even a question. But it's the intent. It is the messaging. It is the right before the election, because that you're right. That in particular, that militia plot was from last year. Why the timing? Again, and he started doing this immediately after J6. There's a defendant, like I said, Chris Finney. They got his information out of Lang's phone because he was part of the first militia plot, and so it never ends. It never ends. Hopefully it does. Hopefully this is a burned asset and stuff. But.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the people you just named off, and I would swear to God, like Mindy, she's not a Fed, folks. But we should be very careful. Look, I'm guilty of it too. I had to extract myself from an organization that I got talked into creating a chapter of here in the state just not too long ago for legal reasons, because the organization was doing things that I wasn't aware of. So we have to be careful about who we get involved with, what organizations we get involved with, and keep an eye on our names, because I think you're right. I wouldn't put it past this guy to put people's names on a list just because, hey, that sounds like a good one from that state, that kind of thing. So it could be any number of
things. I think
be more careful. Go ahead.
I think that people need to realize, and again, it's an unfortunate reality, either the feds will create honeypots or they will infiltrate organizations. So unfortunately, like with J6, you have the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, and they were entrapped, they were infiltrated, they were set up. So even if you have good intentions, like you just said, there are groups, people have good intentions when they get involved in them, and then they can be co-opted or infiltrated. And it's like you have to spend your entire life looking over your shoulder, making sure, like we had a running gag in the jail. Anytime you said something that could even remotely be misinterpreted, you would yell, disavow, disavow. And that's really that's how we've had to live our lives for 4 years, and it's going to get worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It's going to get worse. Mr. Producer, will you bring up the portrait for the PatriotBidProject.com that I was talking about? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. That's the portrait from the Patriot Bid Project. And again, this isn't a grift. I know Cynthia Hughes. I've met her. I've worked with her. I've donated to her organization and spoken at an event. That's where I met Tim the first time. The group really does. It just wants to help and does help. And these funds will go to help this couple that I believe created the portrait, which is beautiful. I'm going to put a bid on it myself personally. And then the other half will go to the Patriot Freedom Project, which Cynthia Hughes is the leader of, and Tim's part of it. Like I said, I've donated to it too, and they take care of families. The Cooney family, Chris Cooney, Captain Chris Cooney. I also met at an event with them. So they're good people, and they deserve the help, because a lot of people have been crushed. We got to take our last break, Tim. When we come back, I want to talk about just a little bit about Ray Epps, but continue this conversation about how to identify these people and these ops, because that's the best way to prevent this and call it out and maybe put an end to it, at least for the attacks on our side, and then we can move on and make this country greater than it's ever been before. We'll be right back with Tim Hill.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Two pieces of information. Ray Epps was on FBI's most wanted list one day, and the next day he was off of the FBI's most wanted list. There are only two ways that happens. You die, or your informant.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed. Tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go. I'll say it.
All right.
We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
These Fed posting? We need to go into the Capitol. I didn't see that coming. Okay.
Monument Hill. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction. Please spread the word.
All right. Noted. But one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
Are we going to get arrested if we go up there?
we don't need to get
You
shot.
arrest us all?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is J6 political prisoner Tim Hill. And Tim is, he's on a mission, and it's a righteous mission, to call out the infiltrators of the J6 political prisoner community. And it's because of what you just saw right there. You should think about 9/11 and the almost 3,000 Americans and people from other countries that died, innocent people that died at the hands of the Islamist terrorists that day, because of a lot of errors. And we had the same amount of information you saw that's been compiled about Ray Epps there that shows that he was on an op. We had that. We made the same mistakes. Not we, the government, but in this case, the people who had that information, no repository of it to spread it out, to communicate it out to the crowd, to communicate it out to fellow citizens existed at the time in order to identify what was happening before really bad things happened, like Ashley Babbitt getting killed because of an Antifa man. I'm glad you brought that up, Tim. That Antifa guy, Zach, that was standing right there. I think she even tried to hit him in the jaw before she was killed, murdered by that Capitol police officer. But This is life and death, folks. That's why I showed that little clip there. We have to get better, both as with our government recognizing the intelligence pieces to be able to put together to identify things like 9/11. But as a people, we have the ability to do it ourselves, because you can't count on government for everything. And that right there about Ray Epps shows it. Tim Hell's back with me for the last segment of the show. And Tim, I know people are going to be upset because we named some names, but this is important. You know, the people whose names have been named need to take a look at what they're involved in. I hope, and I know, like I said, I know some of them, and I want them to do that. But we have to talk about this activity because it's much more than just your community of J6 political prisoners being infiltrated or the J6 event being infiltrated. It's about the ongoing, continuous effort to disrupt our society and divide it and cause much, much more violence than has been created to this point, is it?
Yep. Yes, sir. I mean, divide and rule is an ancient tactic at this point. And so it's easy to see how agent provocateurs can be used to divide the public in order to engage in what is basically a Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, to try to move Overton windows in one way or the other. With regard to Ray Epps and like the way we can start identifying this kind of stuff, I mean, people do act differently when they're in riots. So I mean, and especially when or you could even just say when they're in large groups. That's true. Yeah. That's true. There's plenty of research on group psychology and stuff like that. That's all true. Mm-hmm. But what Ray Epps was doing, it wasn't just at the perimeter, like you just showed. It was the day before. It was over way past Peace Circle. It was all the way near the Ellipse. I know other defendants who spoke with him. He was trying to get them to use bullhorns to direct people to certain areas. Mm-hmm. So this is a carnival barker. And so when you start seeing this kind of stuff, you really have to ask yourself, who appointed this guy? And that's like after January 6th, I really started thinking, like, I was there to hear his speech. Not everybody was at the Capitol for the same reason. Some people went to protest COVID. That's cool. That's on you. That's whatever. I dressed in a suit. I went there to hear the president's speech. I thought it would either be the last speech of his first term or his presidency, or it would be the beginning of his second term. Either way, I was just there for a speech. I didn't go there to hear anybody else speak. So when I look back at all the video and I see all the provocateurs on bullhorns telling people to do things, I'm like, well, who are these people? And it's like, people need to really start thinking about who it is. Like, who are these self-appointed messiahs? We see it with Lang, but he's just one guy. We saw it with Ray Epps. He's one guy. The truth is that there was an army of Ray Eppses at the Capitol on January 6th. And there's plenty of other armies of them all over the country doing all kinds of stuff. And so, we need to keep an eye out for provocateur behavior. If someone's randomly yelling and shouting random stuff, they could either be unhinged, possible, that exists, or they're an agitator. We had the term in the jail, instigators, agitators, and motivators. That is, you need two of the three in order to incite something. And you had all of them at the Capitol. People on bullhorns, people chanting random stuff. And it seems innocuous at first because you're in a group and you're like, all right, cool. I'm on video from my phone. You can see I'm chanting USA or Christ is King. We're singing songs. But as things escalate, people are shouting certain things and everybody else starts shouting them too. And whose house, our house, goes from being an innocuous patriotic thing to basically let's start being more provocative. And so you see all kinds of stuff like that. People dressed certain ways, carrying certain kind of gear, people who seem to know exactly where they're going, even though if this is a random event and because I was a nobody on January 6th, like I said, I was just there for a speech and I walked into a trap. If we are who we say we are, we're nobodies, right? So why do some certain people, when you watch the video, they know exactly what to do. They know exactly who to talk to. They know exactly who to whisper to. When they're in the building, fine. When they go into the building, they know exactly which hallways to go down. They know which curtains to look behind for certain things. And when you start actually examining the video, and this is why they're withholding a lot of it, or whether it's also why they're blurring some people's faces when they do release the video, it's clear as day that there are people there who are agent provocateurs. And when you see it once, you can't unsee it, and when you see one, you can find them all. You just need to pay attention to the video. But yeah, in the future, people, and here's conservatives. Here's it's a weird dichotomy, because conservatives and people on the right are supposed to be these hyper individualist people, but at the same time, I think that if you say the right chants or you have the right cause, it's easy to manipulate people and take them down the wrong path. If we are hyper individualistic, right or wrong, if we're these individualists, we can't let Joe Schmo, who's over here on a bullhorn, tell us to do something and then be like, yeah, okay, sure, and not think about it, or at least not question the motivations.
Crowd psychology and behavior is difficult to overcome, even by the staunchest individualists like Americans. Most Americans, I believe, still are. Tim, yeah, you're exactly right, man. I had Kash Patel in there for a reason, the Director Patel. Now that we have Director Patel and we have Dan Bongino, and those kind of folks actually in the government, what are your reasonable expectations of being able to uncover this infrastructure you were talking about? Because we know it's there. The Fednapping case on Governor Whitmer showed that infrastructure underlying that you were just discussing is there. What are your reasonable expectations of uncovering that, maybe holding some people accountable? I think everybody should be held accountable, but I know I'm also a realist. But uncovering that infrastructure to the light of day, I think would help solve this issue. And then I want you to talk about two names that have popped up a lot recently, Stanley Woodward and Ed Martin, and why they're connected, because I know you know. Go ahead.
Right. So first off, I hate to be a cynic, but I'm going to be agnostic and say I don't know what to expect. I know it has not been a very long time since either got in, and hasn't been a long time since President Trump got in. But I think that the longer it takes for anything to come out of substance, the worse our odds are of getting to the bottom of it. So, like, again, these are people. I take at face value that these guys believe when they say, like, they've got their thumb on the pulse of the intelligence community, this, that, and the other thing. We saw a clip just now of Kash talking about Ray Epps. If these guys truly have, like, if they have any sway or they have any control over the system, please give us something. You know, like, I just, like, the pipe bomber, if the guy was a DOJ asset or an FBI agent, or if he was a DHS asset or something like that, if he was a Capitol Police officer, just tell us. You know, I want to know that there is some sort of that there's some movement going on. I think the longer we wait, the less likely it is the truth's going to come out. This is why I want, again, like a church committee style hearing where we just put all the cards on the table. Like the public's reaction be damned. The truth needs to come out, or we're never going to get it. Yeah, I do hope that they do a good job. I'm not what's the term? I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not Ivan Reichland. I don't want vengeance and this, that, and the other thing. I'm not Batman. I just want the truth, and I want justice. We lost years of our lives, and we deserve to have the truth. Otherwise, again, we said this a million times today, it's going to keep happening unless we identify it and stop it. I'm hoping that the Whitmer people get pardoned as well, because they deserve it. They were entrapped. We were all entrapped, but I'm hoping that we can get something. If we're running these, if we got our people in there, then I'm sorry to say, I don't want to hug an FBI agent. We need to stop trying to reform the FBI's image, because the best way we can reform the image of the FBI is to produce results, not give platitudes. I'm not talking crap, but I think that that's the truth. For those of us, and again, I understand from a real politic perspective, but for those of us who lost years of our lives, it is not a consolation to have photo ops or any of that stuff. That right. We just want the truth. That's the first step towards picking up the pieces. And then as for Stanley Woodward and Ed Martin, what you see is that the people who have been advocating for J6ers for the past few years, it seems like there's a concerted effort to try to knock them off. And again, it's like, well, J6, well, there are a lot of self-appointed leaders of the J6 world who, a lot of them are not even J6ers, but they're these self-appointed messiahs or thought leaders who are trying to cause commotions within the J6 world. When I write the term January 6th community, I usually put it in quotation marks, because for years I was getting attacked by the so-called J6 community and never got defended. But it seems like when some of the provocateurs would get called out, then there's this massive deluge of AstroTurf support. So we need to have a long-term memory. We need to remember the people who were actually there, who actually were substantive in their support, because the attacks that the deep state, the Democrats, whatever, use against Trump, they're also going to use against the people he wants in there to have his back and to actually administer justice. We're not going to get justice for January 6th if the few people who will actually advocate for justice are getting knocked off. So that's it. They're trying to knock them off.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that's why we've got to uncover this infrastructure and get it out in the light of day so we can prevent this stuff from happening and protect the Americans that are doing well, like Donald J. Trump and all those that he's appointing around him to help him get this country set right. Well, thanks a lot, Tim. I'll see you in the after show on Spaces, folks, for about 30 minutes. And tomorrow, Derek Wynn, U.S. Army infantry veteran, a Texan, hurt by the mRNA COVID vaccine mandate. He's got a heck of a story. This is just going to make you very angry again, but that's okay. Anger elevates us to action, and that's what it takes to get these things set right. I'll see you tomorrow on Truth Thursday.